What happens when a group of burglars targets a seemingly helpless pregnant woman? Little do they know, her loyal dog is not just a pet, it's a retired K-9 police officer trained to protect at all costs. What unfolds will leave you on the edge of your seat. In the quiet town of Maplewood, Jessica Carter, a 28-year-old expectant mother, lived with her husband, David, and their German shepherd, Max. The couple had recently moved into their cozy suburban home, preparing for the arrival of their first child. Max, a retired K-9 police dog, had been a part of the family for 2 years. Despite his age, he was still sharp, loyal, and protective. Jessica often joked that Max was her shadow, following her everywhere as if he sensed her vulnerability. On a chilly evening, a black van cruised slowly through the neighborhood. Inside were 3 men: Jake, the leader, slim and cunning; Vince, the muscle of the group; and Tony, the tech-savvy lookout. "This house is perfect," Jake said, pointing at Jessica's home. "No security cameras, no fancy alarms. Just a pregnant woman and her dog." Vince chuckled. "Easy pickings." Tony frowned. "You sure about this? What if the husband's home?" Jake waved him off. "We've been watching. He leaves for work at 6 a.m. and doesn't get back until late. Tonight's our chance." That evening, Jessica curled up on the couch, Max lying at her feet. She rubbed her belly absent-mindedly, humming to the soft music playing in the background. Max suddenly lifted his head, ears pricked, and let out a low growl. "What is it, boy?" Jessica asked, glancing toward the window. She couldn't see anything unusual, but Max's behavior made her uneasy. The growl deepened as Max stood, his body tense. Jessica's heart raced. She locked the front door and reached for her phone, ready to call David. At 9:45 p.m., the burglars made their move. Tony disabled the exterior porch light while Vince jimmied the back door with a crowbar. Jake stood watch, his eyes scanning the quiet street. Inside, Max's growls turned into sharp barks as the back door creaked open. Jessica grabbed a kitchen knife, her hands trembling. "Stay calm, Max," she whispered, her voice shaking. The burglars stepped into the house, whispering to each other. "Keep it quiet," Jake hissed. But Max had other plans. Before the intruders could take another step, Max charged, barking ferociously. Vince, the closest to the door, froze as the 80-pound German shepherd lunged, his teeth bared. "Get this dog off me!" Vince yelled, stumbling backward. Jake pulled out a baton, but Max was too fast. He bit down on Vince's arm, forcing him to drop the crowbar. Jessica seized the moment to retreat to the nursery, locking the door behind her. She called 911, her voice trembling. "There are burglars in my house. Please, hurry." Jake and Tony scrambled to regain control. "It's just a dog," Jake barked, swinging his baton. But Max's training kicked in. He expertly dodged the blow, circling the men with calculated precision. His deep growls made it clear, this was no ordinary pet. Tony fumbled with a stun gun. "I can't get a clear shot," he shouted, panicking as Max lunged again, forcing the intruders to retreat toward the living room. In the nursery, Jessica clutched the knife tightly, listening to the chaos outside. She felt a surge of determination. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to her unborn child. Her phone buzzed. The 911 dispatcher assured her officers were en route. But every second felt like an eternity. Outside, red and blue lights flashed as police cars screeched to a halt in front of the house. Officers poured out, guns drawn, as Max cornered the intruders in the living room. The lead officer, Sergeant Miller, recognized Max immediately. "Good boy, Max," he called out. Hearing a familiar voice, Max backed off, allowing the officers to apprehend the burglars. The burglars have been caught, but the danger is far from over. As Jessica and Max recover from the terrifying ordeal, a shocking motive for the break-in comes to light. What happens next will keep you on the edge of your seat. The intruders were handcuffed and led outside by the police. Jessica, still shaken, sat on the nursery floor with Max lying protectively beside her. His fur was ruffled, and his breathing heavy, but he kept his eyes trained on the door, ready for anything. Sergeant Miller entered the room. "Mrs. Carter, you're safe now. The suspects are in custody." Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Max saved us. If it weren't for him—" Miller knelt to pet Max, who wagged his tail slightly. "He's a hero," Miller said. "And an exceptional dog. You know he used to work with us, right?" Jessica managed a faint smile. "I know. And tonight, he showed exactly why." As the officers searched the burglars' belongings, Tony's laptop caught their attention. Inside, they found surveillance footage and detailed notes about Jessica's daily routine. Sergeant Miller's expression darkened as he reviewed the files. "This wasn't a random break-in," he said. One file was labeled Target, Jessica Carter. It included photos of Jessica, her home, and even her recent ultrasound appointment. Miller immediately called David, who rushed home from work. "What's going on?" David demanded, his face pale. "We believe your wife was specifically targeted," Miller explained. Jessica gasped. "But why? We don't have enemies. We're just normal people." Back at the station, the burglars were interrogated. Vince cracked first, spilling the truth. "It wasn't about money," he admitted. "We were hired to scare her." "Hired by who?" Miller pressed. "I don't know his name," Vince stammered. "But he paid us up front and gave us the intel. Said it was about sending a message." The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. Someone had orchestrated the attack, but why? The next day, Miller returned to Jessica and David's home with new information. "We've connected the suspects to a local contractor named Philip Kane," he said. David frowned. "Kane? That name sounds familiar." Jessica's eyes widened. Philip Kane was a developer who wanted to buy this property months ago. He wanted to tear it down and build a shopping complex. "But we refused to sell." Miller nodded. "We think this was his way of pressuring you to reconsider." Jessica's hand instinctively went to her belly. "He put my baby at risk. Overland?" That evening, Jessica received an anonymous text. "You got lucky. Next time I won't miss." David was furious. "This has gone too far. We need more protection." Jessica agreed. "But what can we do? We can't leave. This is our home." Max, sensing their distress, rested his head on Jessica's lap. His quiet presence gave her a renewed sense of strength. Miller set up a 24-hour police watch around the house, but Keanu wanted to do more. "We can't rely solely on outside help," he said. "We need to show Kane that we're not backing down." With Miller's guidance, Jessica and David installed a state-of-the-art security system. Cameras covered every angle of the property, and motion sensors ensured no one could approach unnoticed. Max, meanwhile, was reintroduced to some of his old K-9 training. Miller brought over equipment to refresh his commands, sharpening his already impressive skills. "You've got yourself the best protection money can't buy," Miller said. Despite the heightened security, Jessica remained on edge. Late one night, Max began barking furiously at the back door. Jessica checked the monitor and saw a figure lurking near the fence. She immediately called Miller, who dispatched officers to the scene. By the time they arrived, the intruder was gone, but they found a threatening note taped to the fence. "Sell or else." The Carters were furious. "He's trying to scare us into submission," David said. Jessica clenched her fists. "Then let's show him we're not scared." With Miller's help, the Carters devised a plan. They would let Kane think his intimidation tactics were working, luring him into a trap. Jessica staged a call, loudly discussing plans to meet with a real estate agent to sell the property. Officers, hidden nearby, recorded the entire conversation. That night, Kane made his move. Under the cover of darkness, he entered the backyard, carrying a can of spray paint and a brick. Before he could act, Max sprang into action, cornering him against the fence. The police moved in, arresting Kane on the spot. With Philip Kane in custody, Jessica and her family feel a glimmer of hope. But when the police uncover something even darker in Kane's files, the fight is far from over. What they find next will send shockwaves through the quiet town of Maplewood, and leave Jessica facing a danger greater than ever before. At the Maplewood police station, Philip Kane sat in a cold interrogation room, his smug demeanor unshaken. Sergeant Miller entered, dropping a thick folder of evidence on the table. "You think you're clever, Kane?" Miller said, glaring at him. "We have you on trespassing, harassment, and conspiracy." Kane leaned back in his chair, smirking. "All you have are accusations. Good luck making them stick." Miller opened the folder, revealing photos and financial records. "This says otherwise. We traced payments to the burglars straight to your account. And that's just the beginning." Kane's smirk faltered, but he remained silent. Back at the Carter home, Miller updated Jessica and David. "We found something disturbing in Kane's files," he began. Jessica's heart sank. "What is it?" Miller sighed. "Kane isn't working alone. He's part of a larger group of developers targeting properties in this area. They've been using threats and illegal tactics to force families to sell." David's jaw tightened. "So, this isn't just about us?" Miller shook his head. "No. It's a coordinated effort, and Kane is just a pawn. We believe there's someone higher up pulling the strings." Jessica's phone buzzed with a text. "You may have stopped Kane, but this isn't over. Leave before it's too late." Jessica showed the message to Miller. "What do we do now?" Miller's face hardened. "We'll increase patrols around the neighborhood, but you need to stay vigilant. Whoever's behind this won't give up easily." Late that night, Max began pacing the house, his ears twitching and his nose to the ground. Jessica watched him nervously. "What is it, boy?" she whispered, following him to the kitchen. Max stood by the back door, growling low. Jessica checked the security cameras but saw nothing unusual. Still, she trusted Max's instincts. She woke David and called Miller, who arrived with a team of officers. "We'll do a sweep," Miller said. While the police searched the property, Max stayed by Jessica's side, his body tense. The officers found signs that someone had tried to tamper with the fence, leaving behind a set of muddy footprints. "They were here," Miller confirmed. Whoever it was, Max scared them off before they could get inside. Jessica hugged Max tightly. "You're our hero," she whispered. But Miller's expression was grim. "This means they're escalating. We need to find out who's behind this, fast." Using the files recovered from Kane's laptop, the police traced the conspiracy to a powerful real estate tycoon named Gregory Steele. Steele was known for his aggressive tactics in acquiring properties, but he always managed to stay one step ahead of the law. Miller shared the findings with the Carters. "Steele is the one orchestrating everything. He's ruthless, and he won't stop until he gets what he wants." David clenched his fists. "So how do we stop him?" Miller's eyes narrowed. "We need evidence that ties him directly to the threats. Without it, he'll walk free." The Carters agreed to participate in a risky sting operation. They would pretend to reconsider selling their property, setting a trap for Steele. Jessica, nervous but determined, practiced the script Miller gave her. "We need him to believe we're giving in," Miller explained. "Once he incriminates himself, we'll have what we need." Steele arrived at the Carters' home, flanked by two intimidating bodyguards. His polished suit and calm demeanor gave no hint of his sinister intentions. Jessica and David played their parts, pretending to be worn down by the threats. "We just want this to end," David said, handing Steele a fake contract. "If selling will make this stop, then fine." Steele smirked. "Smart choice." As he leaned forward to sign the papers, Jessica spoke nervously. "But, was it really necessary to send those men to scare us?" Steele chuckled. "Sometimes people need a little push to make the right decision." The hidden microphones captured every word. As Gregory Steele left the Carter's house, his smirk lingered. Unbeknownst to him, officers were stationed nearby, ready to apprehend him. But just as Miller gave the green light to make the arrest, a police car screeched onto the scene. The officer inside, a man named Detective Rourke, stormed out, yelling, "Stand down! Steele is mine!" Miller's face darkened. "What are you doing, Rourke? We've got this under control." But Steele seized the moment, slipping into his car and speeding away. Rourke made no move to stop him. Miller's jaw tightened. "Rourke, what have you done?" Back at the station, Miller confronted Rourke, who seemed unfazed. "You let Steele escape," Miller said through gritted teeth. "Why?" Rourke shrugged. "You don't know who you're dealing with, Miller. Steele's too powerful. If you push too hard, you'll regret it." It became clear that Rourke was on Steele's payroll, tipping him off and ensuring his safety. Miller returned to the Carters with the grim news. "Steele has people inside the system. This isn't over." Jessica's face went pale. "So he's still coming for us?" Miller nodded. "We'll keep you safe. But we need to act fast before he retaliates." Later that night, Jessica received another text. "You think you can trick me? You'll regret it." Jessica showed the message to David, her voice trembling. "He knows we set him up." David hugged her tightly. "We won't let him hurt you. Not while I'm here. Not while Max is here." Max stood nearby, his sharp eyes scanning the room as if he understood every word. The following evening, under the cover of darkness, Steele's men surrounded the house. They cut the power, plunging the home into darkness. Jessica, David, and Max huddled in the nursery. "Stay calm," David whispered. "The police are on their way." But Max wasn't waiting for backup. He growled low, pacing by the door, ready to defend his family. The first intruder tried to enter through the back door, but Max sprang into action, slamming into the man with incredible force. The intruder screamed as Max sank his teeth into his arm, forcing him to drop his weapon. Another man climbed through a window, but Max was faster, darting through the house with precision honed from years of K-9 training. In the chaos, Jessica heard a crash in the living room. She grabbed a flashlight and the same kitchen knife she had used during the first break-in. She faced one of Steele's men head-on, her voice steady despite her fear. "Get out, or you'll regret it." The man hesitated, but before he could act, Max appeared, snarling ferociously. The intruder dropped his crowbar and bolted. Outside, red and blue lights illuminated the street as police cars arrived. Miller led the charge, storming the house with his team. Max had already subdued two of the intruders, pinning one against the floor while growling at another who had backed into a corner. "Good boy, Max," Miller called out as the officers took control. As the intruders were loaded into squad cars, one of them cracked under pressure, revealing Steele's location. Miller led a raid on Steele's mansion, arresting him and uncovering a trove of evidence linking him to multiple illegal schemes, including the threats against the Carters. Steele's empire crumbled overnight. With Steele behind bars, the Carters could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Jessica stood in the backyard, watching Max chase a ball across the grass. "You're our hero, Max," she said, scratching behind his ears. Miller joined them, smiling. "He's one of the best I've ever seen." "And so are you, Jessica. It takes courage to stand up to someone like Steele." Jessica nodded. "I couldn't have done it without Max, and without your help." As the sun set over Maplewood, the Carters knew their lives would never be the same. But with Max by their side, they felt ready for anything. Heroes come in all shapes and sizes, sometimes with 4 legs and a wagging tail. Max proved that loyalty, bravery, and love can overcome even the darkest of challenges. What would you do if faced with danger? Let us know in the comments below.